K9 barked at a birthday cake and uncovered a shocking secret. The first scream didn't come from a child, it came from a balloon, a sharp pop that made crayons jump and adults laugh too loudly pretending nothing was wrong. Oakridge Elementary smelled of bleach and sugar, paper leaves trembled in the vent's sigh. 5-year-old Sophie Carter leaned toward a rainbow cake crowned with sparklers that fizzed tiny suns. Officer Caleb Thornton stood in the doorway, uniform creased, tie loosened, his son Ethan stretching on tiptoe for a look. Luna lay quiet at his boot, ears triangulated, eyes narrowed, storm ready. Someone said, "Blow them out, sweetheart." The speaker stuttered into the birthday song. Glitter clung to frosting ridges. A PTA mom lifted the knife. Luna's breath hitched. One bark cracked the room. The second shook it. She lunged, shoulder first slamming the table. Cake toppled, plates skittered, candles hissed into smoke. Sweetness turned metallic in Caleb's mouth. "Control your dog," a father snapped, as Luna locked onto the icing seam near the base. Lips peeled, hackles lifted. Ethan froze, crown askew, eyes on his dad's hands as Caleb eased forward, palm open, voice low, the tone for things wired and waiting. A stripe of pink slid down the wall like a bandage. Beneath it a line glistened, too clear, too neat, beading where frosting shouldn't. Principal Ellis produced a smile. "It's just excitement." The lights fluttered, the flag outside clanged, the air cooled without moving. Caleb knelt. The smell under the sugar wasn't vanilla, it was almond and something that didn't belong. He touched the bead with a swab from his kit and watched it cloud. Across the room a party favor bag ticked once against a chair lamp. Luna's head snapped toward the sound, then back to the cake, caught between alarms only she could hear. What happened next will shock you. Caleb Thornton had learned that silence in a school isn't quiet. It presses on your ribs until instincts take the microphone. Oakridge Elementary smelled of disinfectant and tempera paint, the building's polite way of saying nothing is wrong. He stood in room 12 with a badge on his belt and a wrinkle in his sleeve he'd never ironed out, reminding himself he was here as a father helper, not on a call. Ethan, 5 and exacting about fairness, tugged his paper crown straight and flashed a grin that made Caleb feel both brave and exposed. Luna, sable and steady, lay at his boot with her ears pricked and her gaze soft, the look she used to convince classrooms she was a stuffed animal that breathed. Oakridge was a small town on purpose. Leaves rattled along curbs, a flag rope clacked, bulletin boards wore handprints and spelling lists. This autumn had written a thin crack through all that. A run of hoax threats had put a tremor in grown-up voices. Nothing burned, yet teachers flinched at slammed doors and parents watched the entrance like lifeguards. Caleb had cleared those scenes with Luna and filed his reports. Miss Avery conducted calmly like a choir. She seated the children in a semicircle and checked the cake. Sophie Carter stood at the center, tiara tipping toward her ear, dimple loading before her laugh. Her mother, Nadia, arranged plates with the focus of someone who believed order could bargain with fate. Vanessa Reed, the PTA engine, presided over the dessert table. The cake waited under plastic, rainbow proud, frosting thick, the seam at the base neat as ribbon. Sparklers still in sleeves lay beside it. "We'll sing in 1 minute," Miss Avery said. Principal Ellis hovered in the doorway, tall and careful. "Officer Thornton," he murmured, "good optics having you here." Caleb nodded. Luna's tail tapped once. "Bakery donated the cake," Ellis added. "Generous sometimes carried strings." The speaker chirped alive. Parents raised their phones. Ethan stretched on tiptoe to see the frosting roses, then checked to be sure his father was watching him look. Caleb set a light hand on his shoulder and swept the room the way training had drilled into muscle. Doors, windows, hands, objects near edges. He noted favor bags under chairs, a roll of tape on a side table, and a janitor's cart idle in the hall. Behind the sweetened air he caught a faint note he disliked, almond with a shadow. The last time smell had saved him, Luna had paused beside a sedan in a dim garage, her breath going short and analytical. He had followed that quiet to a device with a mercury switch, safe only because stillness arrived before the wrong kind of movement. Since then he had treated Luna's instincts as orders written in a language only she could read. Back in room 12, Vanessa flicked the lighter and handed it to Sophie's father. Sparklers hissed awake. Luna's chest tightened under Caleb's palm. Her head came up, ears forward, eyes fixed on the cake as if a silent bell had started tolling. A low sound gathered in her throat, steady and unmistakable. Caleb felt it through the leash before he truly heard it. He stepped between the table and the children without turning it into a scene. "Friends, back to the reading rug," he said, voice set to the calm that parts crowds. Ethan froze, then obeyed, mouth pressed thin. Vanessa's eyebrows arched. "Officer, it's a cake," she said, humor threaded through the words for control. "Yes," Caleb said, "and we're going to stay safe." Luna moved from down to ready, her gaze pinned the seam where frosting met platter. A clear bead glistened there, too neat, not quite sugar. Under the almond note, something chemical tried to hide. Caleb slid a pocket kit into his hand. He touched a swab to the bead. The cotton clouded, not proof but push. Ethan stood at the doorway with Ms. Avery's hand on his shoulder. "Principal, let's escort the class to the library." "Parents can follow," Caleb said. Ellis measured politics for 2 beats and nodded. Luna held her point. When the room thinned to a handful of adults, Luna circled the table, stopped at the bakery box seam, then lowered her nose to the base. Her tail froze. Caleb crouched. Up close, the frosting told on itself. Someone had lifted a section, smoothed it back and left a second skin along the platter's lip. To a child it was decoration, to a dog it was punctuation. He imagined a dawn kitchen, a steady hand, patience and a plan that did not belong near 5-year-olds. He radioed dispatch, Unit 12 at Oakridge, Room 12. Request a tech and an additional unit. Possible contamination, possible device. Evacuating the class to the library. Staging north entrance. Affirmation crackled back. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it when Luna gave a deeper warning. Nadia clasped Sophie's tiara as if it could deflect air. A text from Mara Kent, his partner. Caleb thumbed back. Luna alert on cake. Residue present. Keep it quiet, and pocketed the phone. He checked under chairs. A favor bag had tipped and ticked once, then went still. He listened. Luna's focus did not leave the cake. "Show me," he murmured. She breathed the seam, glanced toward the lighter, then returned to the base. Ethan pressed his palm to the narrow window on the door. Caleb raised 2 fingers, "Your number, mine," and watched his son steady on that small ritual. Ellis hovered, muttering about email. "It'll look safe," Caleb said. "That beats looking sorry." He slid a butter knife under the platter lip and lifted a fraction of an inch. Frosting peeled like a bandage. Under it a clear gel had pooled along the metal. The almond doubled, a bitter edge followed. He did not need a lab to justify caution, only for the report. He wrapped the knife in a napkin and set it aside. He remembered another autumn, and a bakery that wanted 15 minutes more. He closed it. Firefighters found a cracked valve an hour later. No headline. He kept that lesson like a coin in his pocket. Mara arrived. She read the room and nodded. "Talk to me," she said. Caleb showed the swab, seam, gel and the favor bag that had been ticked once. "We treat it as real," Mara said, and stepped into the hall to brief the incoming tech. Vanessa exhaled. Nadia blinked hard and did not move. Caleb felt the old calm slide into place, the one that arrives when decisions turn into steps. He checked the clock, the window and the space between his knee and the table. He kept his voice for Luna alone. "Good girl," he said. "We heard you." Her tail did not wag. Inside, the air cooled. He breathed, memorized the room and prepared to find out what the cake had been hiding. Ellis hovered at the threshold, uneasy yet skeptical, the posture of a man balancing safety against headline. Caleb felt the old argument rise, precaution versus pride, but let it pass. He trusted Luna, trusted the small alarms in his own bones, and decided that today caution would carry the weight for everyone in the room. Together, Mara arrived with wind-marked hair and an expression that asked for proof before faith. She scanned the smeared wall, the toppled chairs, the rainbow platter sweating sugar, and the way Luna stood fixed at the table like a compass needle that refused to drift. "Convince me," she said. Caleb handed her the napkin-wrapped knife and the cloudy swab. "Gel under the seam," he said. "Almond on top, something bitter below." Luna alerted twice. Vanessa Reed folded her arms like a gate across a path. "It's a party," she said. "Dogs panic at sparklers. The bakery is reputable. We should clean up and finish." Her voice tried to turn calm into a command. Principal Ellis hovered behind her, measuring optics against nerves. eyes flicking to the frosting crater as if it might apologize. Caleb lifted the plastic dome and set it aside. The cake looked like a cliff after a tide, rainbow layers torn and glossy. Along the platter's lip a faint, clear shine caught the light. Luna breathed it, muscles tight but still. Then she pivoted, attention snagged by a scrap near the reading rug. A low growl rolled through her chest. Not loud, just decided. Caleb crossed to the scrap. A sheet of construction paper weighted half under a chair. Thick crayon strokes, red and black, formed a square cake with X's scrawled across it. Jagged lines leapt from the top like sparks. Beside it, a stick dog barked at a seam. At the bottom, in block letters, danger. He slid the page into a clear sleeve, careful not to smear prints. Luna touched the sleeve with her nose and stared back at the platter, as if the paper and the cake were halves of the same sentence. Mara arched a brow. Coincidence? She asked, but the word felt thin. Ms. Avery stepped in, whisper soft and steady. We had free draw before recess, she said. No names on some pages. I can ask the kids one by one. Vanessa produced a brittle laugh. Children draw volcanoes over playgrounds, she said. We don't evacuate the town. She aimed a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Officer, we are frightening families for nothing. Caleb kept his tone level. I'm not frightened, he said. I'm listening. He nodded to Mara. She pulled on gloves and used a narrow spatula to skim the platter's edge. A translucent filament lifted, tackier than buttercream, stretching before it snapped. She held it to the field strip. Lemon yellow turned queasy green, possible organophosphate trace, she said. Not a measurement. A direction. Ellis's breath caught. Are the children in danger right now? He asked. They're in the library reading. He sounded like a man testing the floor before stepping. They're safer there than here, Caleb said. We'll keep them there until we know what this is. He labeled sterile vials, scooped residue, sealed, initialed and logged the time. Chain of custody begins at 11:23, he said. Evidence 1, platter gel. Evidence 2, frosting composite. He photographed the seam, the lifted film, the strip and the drawing sleeve with a scale card beside each. Vanessa's shoulders dropped a fraction. I picked up the cake myself, she said. Bramble and beech. Pauline boxed it. I watched. It rode in my passenger seat. It went into the staff fridge. Nadia helped carry it here. That is the entire journey. She lifted her chin as if precision could undo doubt. No strangers. Strangers aren't required, Mara said. Access is access. She looked at Ellis. We need the staff fridge, camera, and the hallway feed. Ellis nodded and started texting. I'll pull the last 4 hours. Luna's ears twitched. She moved to a party favor bag by a chair leg and froze. Caleb crouched listening. The room settled. Heat vents sighed. A distant bell rang for another class. The bag held stickers, erasers, a whistle and a yo-yo. He turned it over, heard nothing suspicious and set it aside. Luna returned to the drawing, then the cake, caught between 2 alarms only she could hear. Caleb remembered a dim garage years ago, Luna pausing so subtly he almost missed it. Her stillness had led him to a mercury switch hidden in cloth, a trap patient enough to wait for the wrong breath. He had promised then to treat her instincts like instructions. Ms. Avery glanced at the sleeve. If a child felt unsafe, they might draw instead of speak, she said. We teach them to tell grown-ups. Sometimes pictures tell first. Vanessa rubbed glitter from her wrist, suddenly pale. If this is real, she said, someone used our kindness as cover. The thought made her voice small. She looked at Sophie's tiara looped on a chair back, its plastic gems winking without humor. Her mother needed this to be nice. Caleb thought of Ethan peering through the door window, eyes waiting for the 2-finger sign that meant keep steady. He signed it again for himself, a private promise to hold the line. We'll find what's true, he said. Carefully, the courier called from the north entrance. Mara sealed the evidence box while Caleb filled out the manifest. They walked the hall with Luna pacing at heel, her nails ticking like a patient metronome. Children pressed faces to the library glass, coins of curiosity and fear. Caleb kept his gaze forward, resisting the urge to perform reassurance. He preferred to build. Outside, the wind lifted leaves and sent the flag into a noisy shrug. He signed the transfer, watched the insulated crate swallow the box, and stepped back as the van pulled away. For a moment the day looked ordinary again. He didn't trust. Back in room 12, the metallic platter shone bare, a moon without weather. Ellis closed the door and leaned on the jamb. "Parents will ask what happened," he said. "Do we tell them a dog ruined a cake, or that the cake may have been dangerous? We tell them we acted on an alert and sent material for testing." Caleb said. "We tell them their kids are safe, and we'll share facts when we have them." He met Vanessa's eyes. "That means before rumors learn to sprint." She nodded, chastened and grateful at once. "I'll draft a message," she said. "Clear, not panicked. Include an ask." Ms. Avery added, "If anyone saw the cake handled, or noticed someone near the table, tell us." She hesitated, "And maybe ask about drawings in free time. We can collect them quietly." Mara studied the room's small map of smears, crumbs and tracks. "I'm calling Bramble and Beach," she said. "If someone tampered on their side, they need to lock down inventory." She glanced at Luna. "And if this was placed after boxing, we need to know who had Luna's attention shifted to a faint line on the tile, a curved streak of that same shine, as if a shoe had kissed the residue and turned. Caleb photographed it. "Right foot pivot," he said. "Small adult or older teen, based on arc." He marked it with a placard cut from an index card. Details built ladders out of fog, and he climbed by inches. Vanessa exhaled. "I spoke too quickly," she said to Caleb. "I was trying to keep the room calm. I didn't want a stampede." "We all want that," he said. "But calm is a bridge, not a blindfold." He crouched to Luna's level. "Good work," he murmured. She blinked, keyed up, energy leashed by training. He felt a tug in his chest that had nothing to do with the case, and everything to do with the quiet fact of partnership. She had carried him through smoke once. Today she had shouldered a room. The lab texted receipt confirmation, and an estimated panel start time. Mara held up the phone. "They'll rush," she said. She looked at the sleeve. "We should talk to the kids about the drawing." Gentle language offer choices. Ms. Avery nodded. "I'll start with table groups, one by one. No pressure." Doubt pressed from three sides. The bakery's reputation. Vanessa's instinct to normalize. Ellis's need for order. Determination pushed from the fore. Caleb let both live in him, not as enemies but as weights that kept the beam from tipping. He could hear Luna's steady breath, a rhythm marking patience. He lifted the drawing sleeve so it caught the light. The red X's looked like warnings and like kisses crossed out. The stick dog's mouth was a box of squares, barking forever at a line no one else saw. "This is a clue," he said, "not a conclusion. We'll treat it like a thread worth tugging." He let a beat pass, then added, "Have you ever sensed danger no one else saw?" Silence answered. Vanessa wiped her sleeve. Ellis straightened his tie. Mara capped her pen and listened as if the quiet could testify. Caleb felt the case tilt toward them, not solved, but will. The first clue had a shape he could hold. A smear that did not belong. A drawing that did, and a town ready to choose between fast comfort and careful truth. He chose for them until they could. Luna settled at his boot, eyes on the door waiting for the next small sound that might matter. The lab called while the library's read aloud drifted down the hall like a lullaby, pretending not to be a siren. Mara put the phone on speaker so Ellis and Vanessa could hear. The analyst's voice was brisk and short on comfort. Preliminary screening showed an organophosphate signature in the frosting residue, a concentrate strong enough that a small child could suffer vomiting, tremors, even respiratory failure from a few bites. Confirmation panels would run later. The direction, however, was certain. The word landed with a weight that didn't bounce. Caleb thanked the lab, logged the time, and looked at Luna. She didn't move, but her eyes said the thing he had already decided. Treat it as Ellis cleared his throat and began typing a notice. "We'll hold students in the library, cancel anything with food and stagger pickup," he said. Vanessa exhaled and nodded. "I'll draft for families calm, factual, no blame, plus a tip line." She met Caleb's gaze. "We can't let gossip outrun truth," he agreed, then caught the fading echo of almond lifting from the bare platter, a ghost of what had almost gone into small mouths. It turned the room colder. He couldn't stop the slide into memory. Another autumn, different walls, same cleanser. A cooler of sports drinks had been dosed with a lab solvent, clear inside, clear set out during a fundraiser. Luna had paused at the threshold, retraced a step and fixed on one cap that glistened wrong. 3 teenagers lived because a dog heard a note that the room ignored. He had carried that lesson like a talisman ever since. Listen until listening becomes action. Dispatch cracked across the radio with a tone that bristled. Structure fire at Bramble and Beach. Smoke showing, units en route. Mara's eyes found his. "Someone scrubbing the board," she said. Caleb clipped the leash and told Ms. Avery to keep reading, praising her for guarding the peace. He gave Ethan a look that meant, "I'm here even when I step away." Ethan lifted 2 fingers, their steady signal, and Caleb felt his own breathing fall in line. They reached the cruiser as a gray column unrolled above Maine. Sirens braided the wind. Oakridge didn't often hear that much noise. Today the town bent around it. Caleb drove with smooth urgency, distance dissolved. Luna braced in back, breath even, ears triangulate. Mara read updates. Flames in a rear room, a half-jammed side door, neighbors evacuated, no injuries yet. The bakery's familiar sign shimmered behind heat distortion when they arrived. A firefighter waved them to the table. Sugar and wood char turned the air harsh. Something sharper threaded the smoke. A solvent note that made Caleb's mouth taste metallic, spray painted across the front window, wet enough to gleam, were 3 words in jagged black. She stopped it. Drips made fangs at every letter. Mara stared. "She, not you," she said, then looked at Luna. "They're not talking about the principal." Cold traveled through Caleb in a place the fire couldn't reach. The cake had been vector or bait. Luna had ruined. If the message belonged to this blaze, someone had decided gratitude would not be part of the day. He opened the cage. Luna lowered her head, sampled the heat, and pointed her nose toward the alley with line-straight certainty he had learned not to question. The chief stomped over, visor up, voice pitched over the fans. "Backroom ignition, fast spread. Suspicious origin," she said. "No staff inside after close, per the owner. We'll want your K9 for a post-knockdown read." She followed his stare to the letters. "When did that go up?" Caleb stepped close. Solvent halos rainbowed in the sun. A drip trembled and fell. "Minutes," he said. "Not hours." Mara canvassed while crews punched holes and doused heat. A bookseller produced alley foot. On screen a hooded figure moved with a not quite limp, a bag bumping his thigh. He vanished behind a dumpster for 2 minutes, then jogged east, palming something small to a parked car before leaving frame. The image was muddy. The gate rang an old bell. Mark Travis, Caleb's former custodian, fired for bypassing safety locks and stashing unlabeled chemicals. Grievance letters that read like manifestos. He knew the staff lounge. Mara called for a unit to sit on his duplex and for a judge to stand by. "If the cake was safe when boxed," she said. "Somebody reached it after. A fridge is a door like any other." She glanced at the window. "And if he wants to wound the town, humiliating the dog is a message." Inside after the knockdown, the bakery wore a skin of the counter had become grain and nail heads. The mixer stood like a monument. The walk-in hummed, as if bored by drama. Luna nosed a scabbed hinge on the side door, then bumped a low vent. Caleb unscrewed the grill and found a used glove wedged behind. Heat had smudged the print inside but not erased it. He tweezed it into a bag sealed, labeled and logged. Details were steps. Steps built bridges. The owner, Pauline, arrived with ash on her face and invoices in her arm. She had locked at 6, gone home to hem the tablecloths for a fair, posted nothing about the birthday order, and noticed no tale. When she saw the graffiti, anger steadied her voice. "We bake for funerals and for first steps," she said. "Who writes that at a window?" Firefighters traced the char to a low shelf near cleaning supplies. Solvent cans had popped. One cap lay melted like a coin. The patrol at Travis's place reported blinds shut and a truck gone. No answer at the door. A neighbor offered that he'd been seen yesterday lugging a toolbox and muttering about how the board had poisoned his life. The phrasing made Caleb's skin prickle. He photographed a partial sole print by the alley door, a small chip missing near the heel, another hook to hang a case on if luck showed up later. They rolled back to the school through streets that smelled like smoke and wet leaves. Normal life tried to knit as they passed. A mail carrier tugged a stubborn latch. A girl in a yellow coat hopped chalk squares the wind was smudging. At Oakridge library time had become an author visit, improvised by Ms. Avery, complete with questions about working dogs. Ethan raised his hand and asked how a dog knows which things in a room matter. The burn in Caleb's throat softened into something steadier. He lifted a palm through the glass and watched Ethan's shoulders ease. Outside he updated Ella. The principal had a draft email open. Vanessa stood beside him editing. They added an ask for observations near the staff lounge between 8 and 10, included a tip line and warned against sharing unverified claims. The send button felt heavier than usual. The town would talk now, but the first version of the story would travel with a spine of facts. Mara returned with a copy of Travis's termination file. Safety violations, a written warning, an incident with an unlabeled pesticide in a spray bottle, and a confrontation in which he had called the board arrogant. 3 appeals, all denied. A daughter in the district, a resentment with group. He fit too well, which meant Caleb had to treat the fit with suspicion. Good narratives trap as easily as bad ones. The lab texted again, a stronger read on the pesticide family, consistent with a groundskeeping concentration. Panels would finish later, but the risk to children from a bite matched the veterinary bulletins they'd seen before. Caleb looked at Luna and felt a muscle in his jaw jump. Someone had placed something where children eat and then tried to burn away the fingerprints of intent. The idea that a dog who saved a room could be the point of that anger made his hands go still. Mara leaned against the cinder block. "You're thinking about the fundraiser case," she said. He nodded. "And about Ethan." Saying the name out loud put heat behind his ribs. He saw his son's crown askew, the chair scraping, the breath held between bark and scream. He let the image harden into purpose instead of fear. He knelt to Luna's level. "Good work," he whispered. "We heard you." She blinked, keyed up yet composed, anchored at the exact center of herself. He stood and looked through the narrow window at the library, where a boy traced letters while pretending not to watch the door. The day had been carved open, but edges could be joined if they moved with care. The case had shifted from suspicion to attack and from accident to mess. He could not control whether the town understood the difference yet. He could control what came next, collect what remained, guard the people in front of him, and hunt the person who believed harm proved a point. He let the question he gave new officers surface, the one that sorts bravado from duty. What would you risk to keep someone safe? He did not say the answer. The dog at his boot was saying it already. Caleb moved with Luna through the corridor behind the multi-purpose room where poster rolls leaned like sleeping saplings and stacked tables made aisles that swallowed footsteps. The school's quiet layered with the thin buzz of vents and the paper-dry smell of starch and cardboard. He had the building's bones in mind: closets, service shafts, the line where new drywall met old plaster, and he let the dog decide which bone mattered. Her head cut left at a scuffed door stamped "Story." Principal Ellis arrived with a jangling ring and a sorry look, spun the key, and the hinge answered with a tired scrape. Inside, detergent and chalk dust mingled, fluorescent light flattened every color to hospital pale. On the second shelf, half hidden behind a carton of forks, a backpack crouched with one strap twisted, the nylon dusty yet recently handled. Caleb didn't touch it. He mapped the shelf with a slow lens, placed a scale card, listened for ticks, and felt only the steady drum in his wrists. Luna stood in a stillness that meant yes. He eased the zipper an inch, then more. Inside lay 2 pairs of nitrile gloves, one powdered with ash, plus a burned notebook whose edges stuck to the lining, and a cheap flash drive trapped in a cracked plastic shell. Tucked beneath a red bandana held crystals like coarse salt, the kind grounds crews used to prep pesticide mixes. Mara slipped in on soft soles, gloved up, and lifted the notebook with tweezers. Beneath the blistered cover, pages had survived in islands, block letters, dates, bullet points about the school board, a clipped article on contract consolidation, a receipt from Bramble and Beach fused to paper like a scar. Caleb bagged the gloves and bandana, logged the time, and held the flash drive to the light. Its metal tongue showed heat bloom as if someone had tried to cook away fingerprints. "Air-gapped machine," Mara said. Ellis brought a testing Chromebook, radios disabled, battery yanked. While Mara prepped it, Luna left the shelf and nosed a low wall vent. A thin whine rose in her throat, the note she saved for things that pretended to belong. The vent screws matched except two shiny threads biting shallow. Caleb photographed the grill, backed out the odd screw with a coin, and slid the panel free. Behind it, tape and a sliver of project board corralled hair-thin wire that ran along the base toward the multi-purpose room like a gray vein. Heat drained from his face. "Ellis," Mara said, already moving, "clear this hall, nobody touches the party tables." She called the county bomb squad and killed her phone. Caleb traced the wire with his eyes to the leg of the table that had held Sophie's cake. Beneath the lip, a compact housing no larger than a mint tin sat taped in shadow: pressure switch, battery backer, a tiny RF booster and a receiver the size of a thumbnail. The skirt they'd planned to clip around the table would have hidden all of it, waiting for small hands leaning toward candles. He made his breath deliberate. "Hold," he told Luna. She sat, weight forward, eyes bright, tail still ready, not reckless. In the office, the Chromebook coughed away. Mara opened the drive folders named IMG, DOC and VID. In IMG, dozens of photos, the school board at meetings, screenshots from social profiles. 3 candids through a windshield with faces circled in red and 2 marked with crude X's, another labeled auditorium map. PMG with arrows drawn toward choke points. The DOC folder held a draft statement thick with grievance, words like neglect, cleanse and reckon, signature line blank. VID contained a 30-second clip from the staff lounge, angle high, frame tight on the fridge. A hand entered, opened the door, palmed a white cake box and left, sleeve patched with duct tape that caught the light. Mara printed stills, bagged the drive and sent a quiet ping to Untel for prepaid numbers scrawled in the notebook's margin. "Travis," she said, not triumphant, just mapping. He fit the duct tape, the anger, the maintenance knowledge and the prior safety violation. He also had a daughter the age of Ethan, which tugged at something in Caleb he refused to let steer his hands. The bomb squad arrived, a lead in a beat-up ball cap, a tech in a suit like a beetle, another with a bag of little tools that could convince wires to forget their job. Caleb briefed crisp wire path, vent cavity housing, pressure pad, possible RF wake. The robot went in, a rolling shoebox with a camera stock and a puck-shaped disrupt. On the monitor the under-table world resolved, switch bridging to the pad where cake weight would have settled, booster taped with satisfied neatness, receiver board gleaming too new for thrift. "No dead man," a tech said. "We can disrupt." The puck kissed the housing. The image ghosted, snapped back and the switch lay like a twig. "Safe," the lead said, the corridor exhaling in one body. Luna's shoulders softened a fraction. Caleb kept his edges sharp. Evidence turned from teeth to testimony. He and a tech broke the device down into gloved pieces: pad, booster, battery, switch, receiver. The solder on the transmitter board bore a familiar scar, the uneven oval he'd seen on devices seized when Mark Travis had copy built from online schematics last year. But the receiver model was newer, not a salvage special hinting at money or a supplier beyond a man between jobs. In storage, Mara documented the notebook, curling each page back with a palette knife, photographing rage into legible fragments. A line read, "They took everything beside the date of Travis's failed suit." Another read, "She listens to the dog," with 3 slashes scored hard enough to emboss the next sheet. The pronoun folded neatly into the graffiti at the bakery. She stopped it. Grievance had shape, so did fixation. Caleb printed the fridge still in a corridor frame that caught a hooded figure slipping from storage, sleeve patch bright with duct tape, jaw shadowed, gait a near limp he had written into reports before. It stitched Travis to the building with a thread even a defense would struggle to unknot. Yet that receiver board still whispered about someone else, a hand that supplied parts and maybe orders. Ellis hovered at the threshold, administrative backbone gone quiet, eyes on the robot like a parishioner who couldn't quite kneel. Vanessa arrived with a stack of letters and a face scrubbed of PTA brightness. She looked at the vent and pressed a palm to her chest. "How close were we?" "Close," Caleb said, "but not closer because a dog refused to protect." He followed the wire's ghost line in his mind to the table and then back through the wall where children had taped paper leaves an hour before. He forced the picture of Ethan's crown out of focus and replaced it with the photograph of a soldier's skull. The bomb team packaged the remnants, left 2 officers to hold the room and warned about secondary. Caleb bagged the crystals from the bandana for the lab, and called facilities for a vent crawl. A maintenance tech with forearms like timbers snaked a camera through and found scuffs where elbows had braced behind the drywall. The path traced a patient loop service hatch to storage vent along base to the party table, a timeline stitched to bell schedules and parent arrival habits. Someone moving when hallways thinned and eyes changed jobs. In the office, Intel pinged back. 2 numbers in the notebook matched prepaid phones that had lit up near the bakery last night, and pinged a tower by the old rail yard this morning. A small current ran up Caleb's spine, not fear, not triumph, only direction. He looked past the glass at the library, where Ms. Avery asked the class what jobs dogs can learn. Ethan's hand rose, and the answer floated across the quiet protect. Caleb knelt beside Luna, and felt the warm scene where instinct met training. She pressed her muzzle into his palm and went still again, content to be a metronome while adults made decisions. He stood and wrote in his notes the sentence that had started to own the day, a question the town would need to carry home on paper and in practice. What's hiding in the places you trust most? He did not say it to the parents in the hallway, yet it colored every step. Travis was the easy branch, the kind that snapped when you grabbed it, but the tree felt larger, newer boards, cleaner money, a drive with maps that extended beyond a single party toward the auditorium, the library, and any room where crowds earned cake. He turned that sense into tasks, traced the receiver's cellar, pull railyard footage, ping pawn shops for parts, put eyes on Travis's duplex without spooking a second hand, searched the service corridors with facilities until every screw told its story. Outside, the afternoon had the washed look of rain that mist, smoke faint on the breeze from the bakery's black window. The words, "She stopped it drying to Matt." Caleb signed the evidence seals, felt the ache in his shoulders arrive, and let resolve pour over it like cold water. A device had been disarmed in a place built for birthdays. A town had learned that safety wears seams. The map on the flash drive promised more than one rehearsal. He touched the dog's head, met his son's steady stare through glass, and promised the hallway, the library, and the rooms that smelled like glue that he would find the hand that fed anger its tools, whether it wore duct tape or a cleaner sleeve. Caleb found Travis's duplex by following the map of peeled paint and quiet porches. The siding flaked like old sunburn, and a tricycle without a back wheel leaned against a planter full of stubborn weeds. Luna tasted the air at the step, then looked up for permission. He clipped her lead to his belt, knocked twice, and waited through a silence that had a heartbeat. A chain slid. The door opened on a man with mechanic gray hands and a work shirt clean only at the collar. Mark Travis's eyes carried too many late nights. A girl hovered behind him in the hallway, toes on the seam where vinyl met carpet, backpack still on one shoulder. Lily. Ethan had said her name that morning as if it were a song he didn't want to forget. "We'll stay by the light," Caleb said. Luna folded into a down near the jamb, watchful. Travis's living room showed a box fan, a couch with a quilt, and photos taped to the wall. Lily missing front teeth, a science fair board, and a classroom door covered in handprint turkeys. The kitchen smelled like old coffee and solvent. It was the kind of place where money stretched and then thinned. "I didn't touch any cake," Travis said before questions started. "I didn't light anything either." His stare slid toward the sink where a barbecue lighter lay beside an ashtray. Caleb sat because standing turns rooms into courtrooms. There was pesticide residue in the frosting, he said, and a device under the birthday table. Disarmed, no one hurt. He let facts stand without leaning on them. You fire a man for telling you the locks don't lock, and he becomes the arsonist of your story. Travis said, "I wrote letters. I said the board cut corners. That doesn't make me your villain." "Villains like shadows," Caleb said. "This one liked vents." He looked to Lily. "Ethan liked your galaxy poster." Her chin lifted in surprise. "He said the meteors looked like pepper," she whispered. Then to Luna, "Hi." The dog blinked, patient as furniture. Travis's shoulders softened for a beat that felt like the weather changing. "We found a backpack in the school storage room," Caleb said. "Gloves, a burned notebook, a flash drive with board photos." He watched for a flinch and got a muscle jumping along the jaw. "People write things they shouldn't," Travis said. "They write them down so they don't do them." His eyes hardened. "If I had done something, I wouldn't be standing here with a kid and a bill due." "Who's they when you say they took everything?" Caleb asked. "The board," he answered, "and the contractor who won after the bid got clarified. Hours gone. Insurance gone. Then they told me to smile at a town meeting. He flicked a hand at the taped photos. Policy doesn't hug your kid at night. Luna's ear twitched toward Lily's backpack. The bag sagged heavily at the bottom seam. What's in the pack? Caleb asked. Homework, Lily said, squeezing the strap. And my art folder. We're done unless you have paper, Travis said, voice cooling. For now, Caleb answered, standing. He set a card on the table and wrote his cell number beneath his name. If anyone tries to use your anger or your name, call. That makes you a target too. On the porch, damp leaves and cooked grease rode the wind. Luna pushed her nose along the step grain and huffed. You can't yank truth out of a house, Caleb reminded himself. You let air do part of the work. He drove home with the radio off, the town moving in threads that wanted to not smoke still smudging the bakery's roofline, a mail carrier fighting a latch, kids in thin jackets racing the cold. The house opened its ordinary warmth when he keyed the lock. Ethan slid across the floor in socks, hair spiked by a library nap. Why did Luna bark at the cake? He asked without hello. Ms. Avery said she was brave. Did she think the sparklers were mean? Caleb crouched to the distance where truth fit. She smelled something that didn't belong, he said. Her job is to tell me. My job is to listen, even if it looks strange. I can listen too, Ethan said, full of oaths. He stroked Luna's ear. The dog leaned into his shins, sighing like a kettle settled. After dinner with dishes drying and a cartoon murmuring down the hall, Caleb laid copies on the table, the lounge camera still of a hand lifting the fridge door, the receiver board's model number, photos of the device broken cleanly into testimony, a blow-up of the message on the bakery window. He slid the photo of the burned notebook closer. The phrase carved through paper and into wood looked like a bruise. They took everything. His memory rolled back to the backpack's frayed lining. He signed out the original from evidence for a second. Careful look in the garage office under a camera with a witness beside him. The bottom seam bubbled. He eased a blunt probe under the ridge and found a hidden pocket. Inside, wrapped in waxy sandwich paper, a folded square of receipt stock waited. Same phrase, smaller script. They took everything. On the back, initials marched beside times and places. AB 630 YMCA, Lot, CE 705 Auditorium Dock, LW 740 Library Side, PN. There was a contractor's name he recognized from the lawsuit paperwork. He photographed both sides, bagged the slip and amended the evidence log. Clues don't sit still, they open if you keep asking. Night lowered, and with it came a memory that never asked permission. Winter, a warehouse dark enough to edit the world. Pallets are tightly wrapped like ice. He and Luna had swept along oil tracks, until the air changed. Not a smell, a refusal to be smell. Luna stopped so completely that even her whiskers seemed to hold their breath. He took one more step and felt wrongness the way a hand finds a live wire. Behind a desk a hand sat on a line that fed a coffee can filled with dry fertilizer and a cap, older than good luck. The man saw him and flinched. The cap hiccuped inside the can. Luna hit him low and clean, teeth nowhere near skin, shoulder jarring bone from leverage. The can rolled. The cap kissed the concrete and died with a puff that sounded like a paper bag. Later, under the spent fume of emergency lights, he carried Luna outside, pressed his forehead to her collar, and promised to trust whatever language lived in her breath. He closed the drawer on the memory and studied the receipt slip. The initials weren't only board members, a teacher's, a maintenance worker, a contractor with a grievance. The lines didn't form a circle, they formed a. Travis sat at the center because he fit duct tape sleeve. Old violations, loud letters, but the newness of the receiver and the neatness of the wiring argued for another hand with money or training. Anger is fuel. Fuel still needs an engine. Ethan patted back, drawn by paper rust. Are you scared? He asked, eyes searching for the kind of answer that teaches. A little, Caleb said. He would not give comfort wrapped in a lie. Being a dad means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Being Luna's partner means listening when she tells me something's wrong. Both are the same kind of brave. Can I be that kind? Ethan asked. You already are when you tell me the truth, Caleb said, tapping the printed still. And when you pay attention to small sounds. Is the cake okay now? Ethan asked around with a yawn. No one will eat that cake, Caleb said. Everyone is okay because she barked. He waited for the sentence to land, then sent the boy to brush his teeth. Luna watched him go, then returned to the rhythm of her breath. Caleb pinned the receipt slip beside the device photo on the corkboard over his desk. The phrase looked different in its smaller hand. Less rage, more law. He wrote a list that didn't care about his worry. Identify the initials, pull auditorium lighting schedules, trace the receiver's seller, source the bandana crystals, interview the contractor, keep eyes on Travis without letting him become the whole story. He added one more line he showed no one. Be the father Ethan needs while the town is learning how to listen. He stood in the doorway where he could see the porch light and his son's nightlight on a single axe. Luna stretched across the threshold, chin on paws, eyes half closed, attention wide awake. The house ticked as heat moved. Outside, a motorcycle downshifted and fell away. Inside, the day tightened into a knot he could still work with. He touched Luna's head and let gratitude move through his hand. Gratitude for a bark that had sounded ridiculous until it saved a room for a child who wanted to learn listening, for a town that might yet choose careful truth over fast comfort. He clicked off the kitchen light and left the board glowing in the hall. Notes pinned like stars he could steer by until morning. The second sweep of the flash drive happened with the blinds down and the office light low, as if glare might steal clues. Mara sat at Caleb's elbow with a legal pad and a pencil that clicked whenever she thought. Luna settled between their chairs, chin on paws, eyes following hands. In the image folder beneath board portraits and screenshots, a file hid behind a dot. Caleb opened it to a high-resolution blueprint of the Oakridge Auditorium, annotated in a tight, patient hand, arrows toward the lobby refreshment tables, circles around the stage left wing, a rectangle over a narrow utility alcove, and asterisks marking sight lines from the control booth. In the footer, someone had typed a date, tomorrow's board meeting, then added a single word in caps, listen. A subfolder contained 2 night clips. The first showed a hooded figure in the rear lot testing the service door with practiced fingertips, then stepping back to study hinge pins and sensor placement. He didn't force, he mapped. The second clip from a utility camera caught the same frame moving along the conduit and pausing where an inspection plate had been replaced. His right foot landed with a small outward roll heel, outside edge push, an odd gate that had surfaced in alley footage from the bakery fire. Frame by frame, the rhythm repeated until recognition felt physical. Caleb noted timestamps, marked angles, and saved stills for comparison before the pattern could talk him into the certainty he hadn't earned. They pulled the burned notebook from evidence and matched the initials on the receipt slip to a board roster, a contractor, and a teacher's aide. Intel tied one prepaid number scrawled in the margin to towers near the rail yard before dawn and the auditorium lot just after dark. A second number touched a small forum where ex-contractors traded gripes and shop talk. One post from last month showed the auditorium facade at dusk with a caption about making people listen when they pretend not to hear. Sloppy enough to trace, bitter enough to matter, the post hung there like a fuse that hadn't found flame yet. Mara ran a background pull on a name that fit the gate, the posts, and the long grievance. Paul Warren. He had won the auditorium refurbishment 2 years back, then watched a change order shove him into debt. The board withheld payment for work that no longer met revised specs under the original rate. He sued and lost. He appealed and lost again. Trucks went to the bank. His shop closed. His partner left. In archived footage from a winter meeting, he stood at the microphone until the timer chimed. When the chair cut the sound, he kept speaking. Then he leaned close to the dead mic and said the sentence that had followed Caleb all day. They took everything. Motive is not guilt, so they built a procedure. The chief looped in the mayor and the fire marshal. The board meeting would proceed, but the room would change. One entrance, bag checks, plainclothes officers seated across the rows, 2 uniforms by the days, one at each side door, a medic near the lobby and a bomb tech on site. The soundboard would be manned the entire night. Storage closets would be locked and taped. Refreshments were shifted to sealed bottles. No food was inside the chamber. The chair agreed to begin with a short safety script, so that calm could arrive with instructions instead of rumors. That afternoon, the auditorium breathed dust and late light. Rows arced toward the stage like ribs, the ceiling plastered spider-webbed with hairline cracks that looked older than arguments. Luna trotted the aisles at heel, pausing where carpet met wood and where baseboards changed age. At the lectern she tipped her head and stared at a rear plate. Caleb found one screw, a quarter-turn light, documented it, opened the hatch and found nothing planted, only the mark of a hand that had explored and then retreated. In the control booth, the stage manager ran dimmers and cue lights and hummed through checklists. "Tomorrow the lobby will be loud," she said. "Sign in at the right, refreshments to the left." If someone wanted a decoy, a cake would be irresistible. Caleb pictured frosting, cloth, wires and a crowd leaning forward because sugar can hide in tents. They traced the blueprint's rectangle to a narrow alcove with a conduit and a hatch that looked like a shrug. No device waited, but a faint solvent sheen kissed the pipe at shoulder height. Sweet at first sniff and then bitter. Caleb swabbed it and logged the time. Near the green room hallway he found a duct cap with 3 old screws and 1 new. The head shone too clean. He photographed the throat and eased the cap back into place, resisting the urge to tug every seam in the building until walls confessed. Back at the station, a clerk delivered a DVD of public comment from the prior winter. Warren stood with notes that looked like invoices and spoke past the chime, trying to turn math into testimony. A guard touched his elbow. He turned and at lobby volume rather than microphone volume said the same flat phrase. "They took everything." The cadence matched the cramped hand on the receipt slip from the backpack. The note was no longer a fragment. It was a signature that kept writing itself across rooms. Caleb phoned the sitter and said he would be late. Ethan asked if Luna would be with him. Caleb said yes. "Then I'm not scared," his son replied, and went back to cutting a paper rocket. The sentence put a weight in Caleb's chest that felt like a promise rather than pressure. He rubbed Luna's neck. She leaned, then returned to that alert calm that steadied rooms by existing. It had steadied him in warehouses, garages, classrooms, and now in a hall that wanted to be about budgets and might become about rest. Just after 9, a street camera near the auditorium lot caught a sedan sliding into shadow without plates. A hooded figure stepped out, walked the perimeter, paused at the side door, and looked up at the sensor, then down at the hinge pins as if timing a prop. The right foot roll sealed the identification. Mara froze the frame and wrote the name beneath it in block letters. Paul Warren. They pushed the clip to patrol with a note to hold off on contact. Cornering him at night could spook a plan into places no plan should go. They finalized deployment. Names slotted into boxes on the whiteboard. Radios checked. A quiet code if Luna sat. A hard code if she barked. Backup channels. A staging lot outside the west doors in case evacuation became necessary. The fire marshal capped occupancy and assigned an extra exit marshal to keep doorways from clogging. The stage manager agreed to keep the sound tech in the booth instead of letting him drift. The chair practiced her script until it sounded like hers and not something borrowed from a manual. When the room emptied, Caleb shut down the monitor and studied the blueprint beside photos of the disarmed device. They took everything, written small on the back of a receipt slip, marched alongside initials that did not all belong to officials. Conspiracy often begins as parallel grievances braided by someone with a plan. The receiver board from the birthday table had been new. That implied money or a supplier with Travis still fit the duct tape sleeve and the ash-powdered gloves, but Warren looked like trunk and root, with others tangled in the shade. He clipped the leash to Luna's collar and walked the quiet hallway. Her nails ticked once, then went silent. He let the building speak, metal cooling in vents, a soda machine swallowing a coin, laughter far off in a patrol room where someone tried to loosen the day. Suspense set a metronome under his ribs. He breathed in 4s until balance returned. Luna lifted her head toward the door as if the air had tapped her shoulder. Tomorrow would place the town inside a plan, and a man who believed loss gave permission would look for leverage. Caleb set his jaw on the only answer he trusted: prepare, watch, listen, move. Mara paused at the threshold with a printout of the blueprint and a highlighter ring around stage left. "If he wants the wing, what do you anchor?" Caleb pointed to the ramp, the alcove, the refreshment line and the booth. "And see the crowd," he said. "If he twitches, he'll recognize that we were already looking." She nodded and slid the paper into her folder. On the way out she said the thing they both knew. "He thinks the sentence is a license." Caleb looked at Luna. "It is." The dog's ears tipped forward, as if agreement had The auditorium filled in layers. Parents in sweaters, students in scuffed sneakers, teachers smoothing sleeves and board members shuffling agendas as if paper could guard them. Stage lights cooled to a working glow while the lobby hummed with name tags and small talk. Caleb stood in the aisle split with Luna at his heel, her attention braided to the room. Mara checked the side doors, touched her radio and signaled the control booth. The chair reminded everyone to keep order. On a skirted table under borrowed fairy lights a sheet cake waited, blank and glossy. A volunteer whispered that the bakery had rescheduled and sent something simple. Caleb logged the note and tasted air. Beneath sugar lived almond, beneath almond lurked a chemical thread trying to hide behind sweetness. He walked Luna past. She glanced once and resumed scanning faces. The meeting began, minutes carried, a facilities update and budget projections that drew sighs. Public comment loomed. The lobby kept feeding people into rows. Luna's ears tilted like needles catching a broadcast. A bottle cap clicked against tile. The scent sharpened sweet into bitter. She rose, muscles tuned like wire, nose drawing a line between cake and the black curtain pocket beside the stage ramp. Her bark detonated the room. One crack stopped sentences, the second erased them. She lunged, slammed into the refreshment table. Plates surfed, cups toppled. The cake skidded and spun, and the glossy coat fractured where her weight had jarred it. Beneath the white, something mechanical flashed. A volunteer's knife clanged and slid under a chair. People startled, then froze, held by the dog's stare. Caleb moved on reflex. He caught the microphone that the chair had left live. "Quietly step outside," he said, voice pitched to carry confidence. "Leave your bags, walk, don't run." He pointed with his whole body, turning confusion into streams. Mara and planted officers stood, palms out, shaping aisles with calm. The sound tech killed the walk-in music but left the lights bright. The room obeyed the grammar of command, scrape of chairs, hush of shoes, the low murmur of adults borrowing a professional calm. Caleb reached the table and crouched. The coating was not frosting, it was a plaster slick shell. Along the base, a razor-thin rectangle framed a pressure pad like the one from the school. A wireless receiver no larger than his thumbprint crouched beside a booster. Solvent rode the air with no disguise. "Pad under the stand," he said to the team in his ear. "Receiver press, same maker as yesterday." The bomb squad slipped through the west door with a case and a robot. Luna's bark changed direction. She cut the sound and fixed on the curtain pocket. Body canted, tail rigid. The cloth quivered. A right foot appeared and rolled heel to outer edge before planting, the tell from alley footage and utility camera clips. "Paul," Caleb said to the fold, not a shout, a naming. Luna burst through, driving her shoulder into the seam and forcing it open. A grunt answered, followed by the clatter of a small device skittering across the floor. Caleb saw a thumb-sized fob spin near a cable coil and towed it toward Mara. She bagged it. "It is done," she said into her mic. On the monitor, the robot's nozzle kissed the housing over the pad. A tiny pop cracked like knuckles. "Switch disrupted," the tech reported. "Receiver dead." Air changed again, that subtle exhale a room takes when a blade moves away from skin. Officers cleared the last stragglers through the doors. Paul Warren sagged against a stand. "They took everything," he said, a sentence worn slick by use. "Bids rewritten, payments delayed. Then they called my lawyer frivolous. I showed them numbers. They stared past me." He looked at the demolished cake. "The dog ruined the lesson." "That was not a lesson," Caleb said. "That was a loaded room." He kept his voice even. "You were seen testing doors. The receiver matches the board from yesterday. The cake was not a dessert. It was a trigger." Warren blinked, anger seeding ground to shame and then to a smaller, more dangerous calm. "They always set refreshments when they want people to stay," he muttered. "I thought fear would make them listen. When the bakery burned, I wrote on the window because she ruined it. She stopped it. She keeps stopping it." His gaze slid toward Luna with a twist that was almost off. "She heard the thing I built, not me." "You wanted attention," Mara said from the wing. "You got ours. You will not like what we do with it." She lifted the bagged remote. "This is the difference between grievance and harm." Officers cuffed him with care thin enough to count as mercy. A medic checked a woman who had sat down hard. A teacher guided a child toward the exit. The chair returned to the microphone, thanked everyone for moving without panic, and announced that the meeting would reconvene next week after a sweep. Applause rose. a low whole sound that acknowledged work done in the open, and the dog who had insisted on truth. In the lobby, a boy in a blue jacket held out a cup of water to Luna as if returning a crown. "Thank you," he said. She drank and then rested her chin on Caleb's knee. He felt the delayed tremor run its course and let it happen. Rooms like this teach you to shelve shock until the right shelf opens. Warren watched from a folding chair, wrists banded. "I was not going to press it until the speeches," he said. "I wanted them to know why. I wanted the numbers on the wall. I wanted them to admit the change order killed my shop." His voice frayed. "My partner left because I could not stop writing letters. My son stopped calling because the court stole the middle of every week. I did not stand in here counting screws to do a bad job," he added soft. "Grief turned into a mirror that only shows your hurt," Caleb said. "People are not drywall. They are not part of your equation." Warren blinked, and surrender crossed his face. "I thought consequences would balance what they took," he said. "I was wrong." "It matters that you say it," Caleb replied, "but it does not undo what you built." He glanced at Luna. She licked a fleck of plaster from her nose and looked back as if to say, "The rest is your job." Caleb faced the crowd again. He thanked the team for following the plan and the bomb squad for turning a dangerous question into a solved problem. He said a K-9's instinct saved a room again, and that vigilance is how ordinary places stay ordinary. Then he offered the question that turns gratitude into memory. "Who's the hero in your life that deserves recognition?" The murmur that followed moved like wind through wheat. A town naming its anchors: custodian, nurse, bus driver, neighbor who checks porch lights when storms take power. Caleb let the sound soak in. He looked at Warren and thought of a sentence scratched into a receipt slip, sprayed on a window, and whispered behind a curtain. "They took everything." Dawn broke over Oakridge with a rinsed, forgiving light, the kind that turns smoke stains into old shadows instead of fresh wounds. By mid-morning, warrant teams finished the last searches tied to the auditorium blueprint. Paul Warren sat in an interview room and, without theater, admitted what the evidence had already said. He had scouted the auditorium, fabricated the pressure pad, and hidden a receiver beneath a plaster shell so a sheet cake could carry more than sugar. He had sprayed the bakery window after the fire, walked the school with a hood drawn low, and counted hinge pins like prayer beads. He named his motive without drama. They took everything. He meant the change order, the lawsuit he lost, the shop that folded. He also admitted something else, smaller and truer. He had left crumbs designed to frame Mark Travis because anger likes shortcuts. The notebook in the backpack, the duct tape on the sleeve, the route through the storage hall, each breadcrumb pointed toward a man the town already disliked. He wanted officials to feel the kind of panic that keeps you awake, and he wanted the town to learn his equation. He signed the statement and watched a handler tag the remote that never reached his thumb because a dog moved first. Mara sat with Travis while the words traveled. Lily hovered in the doorway, shoelace untied, backpack bumping her knee. When the confirmation landed, Mark's face cleared by inches, like a window opening in a latched house. Exonerated, he did not deliver gratitude like a speech. He breathed and took his daughter's hand. "We are going to the bookstore," Lily declared, sudden and certain. Repairing a day could begin with choosing a story. Mara left a card and promised the school would unwind the damage gossip had done. In the hall, Caleb scratched Luna's chest and felt tension slip from her shoulders as if relief were a weight she was trained to set down only when invited. Oakridge's email list shifted from rumor to relief. The school sent a note that named the danger and named the dog that had stopped. Photos traveled fast. Luna sitting square beside a skirted table while a robot hovered. Luna drinking from a paper cup held by a boy in a blue jacket. Luna staring into a curtain fold with her whole body aligned to a decision. Under each image, people wrote a single word and let it be enough: gratitude. The chair rescheduled the meeting and added an agenda item called Community Thanks. The mayor borrowed the lawn, the band director loaned a speaker, and the bakery, soot scrubbed from its sign, offered empty cake boxes to hold cards because frosting could wait. On Friday, the town gathered under a sky the color of porcelain. Officers stood at ease, hands behind their backs, uniforms pressed into lines that meant steady. Parents crowded the walkway, talking quietly as if the volume of relief might spill. Ethan wore a small tie and clenched a bakery token in his fist, blank on one side and stamped with a wheat stalk on the other. He had insisted on paying for a replacement cake, then chose the token instead, a promise toward later sweetness. The chair kept it short. Ordinary courage saved a room and then saved a second room, and ordinary courage is built long before anyone applauds. The chief read a citation like a drumbeat: detection, alert, evacuation, disruption, preservation of life. A silver medallion slid onto Luna's collar and rattled once like a bell. She shook, blinked and sat again, unimpressed by the ceremony and ready to work if work appeared. Ethan stood beside her with shoulders squared, eyes full of that fierce private pride children save for moments when someone they love does something that will not fit inside ordinary sentences. Caleb knelt and showed him how to hold the lead without choking it. He spoke into his son's hair rather than into the microphone. "Her job is to listen," he said. "My job is to listen to her." Ethan nodded as if receiving a task he meant to keep. He stroked Luna's ear. She leaned a fraction and returned to stillness, attention expanding to the flag, the curb, the alley mouth, the places where trouble likes to test itself. When Caleb faced the microphones, he kept his words simple because truth travels farther when it packs light. Luna smelled what sweetness tried to hide and barked before a story could turn into a siren. Training is another word for promises kept until they become muscle. Safety is not a mood, it is a practice made of attention, humility and the courage to choose caution when the room wants chaos. He thanked Ms. Avery for reading when fear wanted a scramble, thanked the lab for speed, and thanked volunteers for moving crowds like water. He thanked the bakery staff for their generosity under the smoke, and he thanked the town for walking not run. He did not name the fear behind his ribs. He did not need to. The dog at his boot had said fear, and relief with her body. Warren had already left in cuffs. As he passed the lawn, he looked toward the noise and for a heartbeat, his face softened back toward grief's original shape. He answered every question and asked for nothing. A judge set no bail and scheduled a hearing that would give the town time to unclench and the school time to fix screws, seals and habits. Maintenance crews tightened hinges and labeled valves. Teachers turned each room into a quiet lesson, not about panic but about noticing. Children listed the ways a building keeps them safe, drills, grown-ups who mean it, and a dog who can hear what plastic tries to hide. Posters bloomed on doors and lockers: we listen, we thank, we check. The slogans were clumsy and perfect, and they made the halls feel like promises. At home the porch smelled like pine and dish soap. Ethan asked the question. Children learned to ask carefully. "Were you scared?" Caleb told the truth. "Yes. Being brave is doing the right thing while scared." Ethan asked where they would put Luna's medal. "On the same collar," Caleb said. "Medals mean a moment. The collar means every day." Luna found the last stripe of sun on the deck and sighed like a kettle settled. The sound loosened something in Caleb's chest that he had held tight since the balloon popped at the party. He let the tremor arrive and pass. He remembered the warehouse night when Luna halted his stride and kept him in the world. The skidding cake and the plaster shell, the black fob sliding away. Every picture ended the same way, a bark and a choice to listen. The ceremony ended with a small procession around the playground so children could pet Luna in pairs, hands flat, voices soft. Each thank you sounded different and meant the same thing. A custodian handed Caleb a screw, whose head was too shiny, and said he had replaced it already. A nurse pressed a folded list into his palm, a tally of inhalers and EpiPens checked that morning. A bus driver tipped her cap and promised to idle farther from the door. Normal life did not return with fanfare, it returned like a tide, one quiet line at a time, and every line carried a little more attention than it had yesterday. At the edge of the grass, Ethan looked up and asked whether Luna could smell pride the way she smelled danger. Caleb said no, but she could feel it through the leash, and he could too. That night, as stars pushed through a thin veil of cloud, he walked the block with Luna trotting light, and he saw the town differently, not brittle but awake. Porches with new bulbs, shops with fresh tape on back doors, neighbors talking by mailboxes about drills and phone trees. He understood that vigilance is not a posture. It is a pattern shared by people who care for one another. Later, when the house was quiet except for dishes drying and the tick of a wall clock, Caleb pinned a copy of The Bakery Window beside the clean lab sheet, and the blue The arc from one to the other fit on a corkboard and also filled a life. He wrote 3 lines and underlined them because habits become rails only when written. Trust is trained, safety is shared, listening is work. So here is the invitation, simple and strong for anyone who stood on that lawn or watched the clip or read the email at a kitchen table and felt their chest loosen. Join us to celebrate heroes like Luna. Follow the stories of working animals who turn instinct into safety, and of handlers who make trust a discipline. Learn how towns choose caution over comfort and keep birthday rooms boring for all the right reasons. Share the names that deserve daily. If a story like this steadied you, carry it forward. Subscribe to Guardians of Valor, keep a space in your week for ordinary courage, and be part of a community that stays vigilant together. Join us to celebrate heroes like Luna. Subscribe now and never miss a story that could change how you see the world and how you protect what matters, for good today.